Monday, May 16th. The board had an executive session at 6 o'clock to talk about some union negotiations. And we did not take any votes at that executive session. So we're back in open. So please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Anybody here for weekly briefing? Public comment and announcements? I just remind everybody tomorrow is election day in the town of Harwich. Polls open at the community center, which is our location for voting. It's 7 a.m. and close at 8 p.m. We will be reviewing the ballot later on in our agenda, but there are a number of items on the, a few items on the ballot that merit certainly some consideration, and obviously elected officials. So please vote. You probably get that message through this after the polls are closed, but anyhow, would be important. So, all right, we'll move on. Oh, Link. Oh,
Thank you. Link Hooper, DPW Director. Last week, the board voted to adjust our seasonal rate, our pay rate, to a maximum of, I think it was 15.25. We advertised last weekend for $14.25. I believe three applications came in today. So that's 3 more than we had. Just want to put the word out. We're still in need of seasonal labor. If you know anybody, send them our way.
How many folks are you looking for?
We were looking for, I believe, 5 or 6.
Okay.
The ball players are, they take care of the fields, and they were not the issue. They return each year. It was working in the cemeteries and highway division.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, anybody else? Okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda. We're going to take these one at a time just because we have a few questions on these, so it'll just be easier. Janelle, you're not going to vote on the first one, so let me ask maybe Linda to just read the first one for us.
Mr. Chair, I move the consent agenda item A, approve minutes, April 4th, 2016, regular session.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded to approve the minutes of April 4th, 2016, regular session. Discussion? Hearing none, we'll put it to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's a vote. Thank you. And Janelle abstained. So now, Janelle, you can go on with the next one, please. B.
Mr. Chair, I move that we confirm the appointment of Denise Kopaz to position of Assistant Assessor.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded to approve or confirm the appointment of Denise Kopaz to the position of Assistant Assessor. Discussion? Hearing none, we'll put it to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Congratulations. Is she out here somewhere?
No, she's not yet.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's get to C now.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the High Water Mark Project Memorandum of Understanding between Barnstable County and FEMA Region 1 and authorize the chair to sign.
Second.
Okay, thank you. So moved and seconded to approve what's called the High Water Mark Project Memorandum of Understanding between Barnstable County and FEMA Region 1 and authorize the chair to sign. Chris or David, do you want to explain this to us? There's some questions about what it really means.
Okay.
You know, what high water is, how you define that. Do you have to move this thing every so often? Global warming?
I'm going to defer very quickly. I've got a supporting cast
Okay,
of
good.
Shannon Jarbeau from the Barnstable County CRS and Floodplain Coordinator, and Nicole, who may have to pronounce her own last name, an AmeriCorps member. So I'd rather turn it over to Shannon to start with.
Shannon, welcome.
Thank you, David.
Help us out. This is a new topic to us, so what are you trying to get done here?
Sure. So this is a project to help increase awareness of flooding in the town and throughout the county. We're working with 8 towns. We do not need to move the signs. They are based on historic flooding in most situations. We'll put them at various points throughout the town. We're working with David to figure out where those locations would be. FEMA pays for the signs themselves. There's not a whole lot that the town needs to do. Do you have more specific questions about it?
Okay, so when someone calls us up at Red River Beach, for instance, and says, I see the high water mark sign, what does that mean?
That means that that is where the level of flooding was from a certain storm. We have data from a couple of different storms, so that'll say right on the sign what storm it was from, when that happened. And there will be a couple of websites, one being the Cape Cod Cooperative Extension, which is my agency, so that's who will mostly direct people back to, and the town is certainly welcome to direct people back to us. The intention is to let people know that there was flooding in these locations and to help them be more aware of their own flood risk. So just
Okay,
let
so-
them know that is where the flooding height was.
So at Red River Beach, the intent would be that the sign would be at a level and identify what would have been the highest water level we ever recorded or knew of?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yep, that's correct.
Okay. All right, Angela?
And what's the purpose of doing this?
The purpose is to improve awareness of an understanding of flood risk. It also helps you get credit in the community rating system, which is a program that Harwich participates in and helps earn your residents discounts on flood insurance. You currently get a 10% discount on your flood insurance. So the more outreach and education that you do can help you improve credit and improve the discount in that program.
Go ahead, Angela.
Is there a negative impact on the value of your house? I mean, if you're sitting next to this sign that says floodplain,
Right.
it strikes me as you lose more than you gain, and if you're the owner of any of this property, you know you're in a floodplain because you're paying insurance, you have mortgages and whatnot, so it's not a surprise to them. And is it designed to drive visitors away? I don't know what the
No.
purpose is.
So the locations are primarily in public locations. They're not really going to be in residential areas. The intention, again, is to really improve flooding awareness. So even though you know that you're in a floodplain, you know that you're paying for flood insurance, maybe you've never seen a flood there, maybe you've never seen any damage. So it's a reminder that you do need to protect yourself from flooding, that it has happened, that it can happen, and just to be aware of that risk and protect yourself and protect your investments.
I'm not at all sure that's needed for people who know they're in a floodplain. But in addition, how did you select, or how does one select which 5, 6, or 10 places you're gonna do? Because I know of a place in Allen Harbor that floods when it rains, and it gets lots of floods, and it's not on your list. So I mean, I don't,
It's
there's
far.
gotta be a rationale. Because
David Spitz,
otherwise-
town planner, will help us with this one.
Thank you. Well, I don't know if I will help you, but I'll tell you what I think. If Donna was still here, she would tell you that the value of the homes is going to be what people are willing to pay for them. And I got a feeling that these signs won't affect that too much. That's just my opinion. Now, as far as where we decide to go with these signs, it's in the packet I gave you. We've got 8 locations. I went back and forth with Nicole quite a bit. They've got a couple of reports that show where from various hurricanes and other northeasters, where the high water actually came to. So we were able to identify 8 locations, 2 at Red River Beach, Witchmere Harbor, Bank Street Beach, Allen Harbor, 1 at Herring River and Lower County Road. The Saquatucket Harbor, John, if he wants to chime in, can tell you a little more about, and the Pleasant Bay. So these are all, yes, they're very publicly visible locations, and yes, maybe somebody will say, my God, not only does Cape Cod have sharks, they got floods too. I guess we think that's okay.
Okay, so let me ask another question. We put these 8 signs or whatever in, and 3 months later, we get so many people complaining about them because they don't understand them, whatever. Are we obligated to keep the signs in place if we had too much pushback from the public, or could we come back to you and say, you know what, we're getting a lot of confusion and a lot of concern about these? Are we committed to leave these if they go in?
That's a good question. That has not come up before. I would have to double check with FEMA. This memorandum of understanding is saying if you put these signs in, you're agreeing to have them there.
Understand.
But I can double check on that and get back to you if you'd like.
Okay, Michael? Yeah.
What other local communities have done this?
Let's see. Mashpee, Wellfleet, Provincetown, Yarmouth, Sandwich, Barnstable. That may be all.
Has anybody not done it?
Yeah, about half the towns were just not interested at this point for whatever reason. That there will probably be a second round of effort on our part to try to get these signs in those towns.
Okay, Michael?
Out of the towns that have done it, has there been pushback from residents at all? That you
Oh,
know?
none have installed them yet. We're all at the same point
Okay.
with all the towns.
Further questions from the board? What's your pleasure?
Don't we have a motion already? Didn't I?
We-
Yeah.
I would like to see what happens in the other towns before we go forward with something that we can't change. And if we have the locations, we can make sure that the landowners there would know about it, but I'm sure they do.
Could I just ask what the time sensitivity of this is? Shannon?
Yes, we are trying to get this done by the end of next month, July at the latest. If that isn't possible, we can extend that. Ideally, it would be June or July. In other locations throughout the country, this has been done, and I have not heard any negative pushback. But of course, those are other parts of the country. So.
Okay, the only one I can remember similar to this is I remember the proposal that came to us a couple of years ago about putting up signs like Red River Beach about sharks.
Yeah,
And
it's the same
at
thing.
that point, we said, wait a minute, we don't necessarily have any sharks, and by the way, do you want to scare everybody? And Chatham went ahead and did theirs. That's fine, and we elected not to at that point, so doesn't mean that's what I'm suggesting here, but what's your pleasure? Michael?
Linda had a question.
Linda?
Angela, I think that, I'm not sure I understand your concern about the property owners understanding this, because I think we own all these properties. The town,
That's all waterfront town
it's
property.
all waterfront town
Yeah.
property, so
I know.
it
but I-
isn't, there aren't homeowners that are going to need to know this. We are the owners.
Fine, and we know where those locations are, right? So
I don't
now
understand the
what's
concern.
purpose? And by the way, next to each of these locations that we own, there are people,
There are homes there,
there
yes.
are homes, and they know it's a flood area. I mean, it's not a surprise.
Mr. Chairman, I'm just curious about the ISO rating. I mean, you said it has a significance to ISO, and how significant is that to doing it or not doing it?
Good question.
It does not have a huge impact. It's not hugely significant, but this is a new FEMA initiative that they are trying to get more communities to take on, so it would certainly be looked upon favorably.
Okay.
And it's also the folks nearby, yes, they know, but a lot of folks go to the beach. A lot of folks see these public areas that may not live right next to it, and it's to let everyone know that there is a flood risk in the town.
Okay, so we have, oh, go ahead, Michael.
I mean, I'd be willing to rescind my motion. I'd like to do a little more research from the communities that are already doing this and bring this back if, so I would rescind my motion if someone rescinded their second.
Seconded the motion. I think you did,
You
Linda,
did.
I think.
I thought I made the motion,
Janelle made the motion.
and you seconded
Okay.
it, right?
So you'd have to rescind your motion.
You willing to
You're
rescind
rescinding your
motion?
second,
I'm going,
so we don't have a second.
You rescind your motion?
I'm not rescinding my motion. I don't see a problem with this.
Let's go forward with the vote then.
Okay.
And that's one way to do it. All right, so there's a motion on the table. This is item C, the consent agenda to approve the high water mark project memorandum of understanding between Barnstable County and FEMA Region 1, and authorize the chair to sign. We'll put that to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. So, does not pass. We look forward to, I think from our discussions, some further information, and let us know how it rolls out in the other towns, and we'll get to see some of those signs. Okay? All right, thank you. D, Janelle?
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve and sign the parking license agreement with TD Bank N.A.
second.
Okay, moved and seconded to approve and sign the parking license agreement with TD Bank N.A. This is down at, where TD Bank is in Harwich Port, adjacent to schoolhouse parking lot. Discussion? Chris, did you have anything on this?
I just was going to, I appreciate Dave Spitz's efforts behind this. It was really his initiative that when they looked at parking, I don't know if a lot of people realize or not, but when you go to TD Bank, there is a ancillary parking that exists kind of up and to the right, if you would, from their parking lot that doesn't get a lot of activity on their behalf. So Dave approached them about doing a alternative that we could use that for town purposes at no expense. So they have agreed to that. There is an expense, and it was part of town meeting, that in order to access that directly from the schoolhouse parking lot, we would have to put in a small, I don't know, access roads, probably an access driveway is probably a better description. So that 30,000 is contemplated to accomplish that.
David?
I don't really have anything to add unless there are any questions.
Okay, Linda?
In terms of that ancillary parking lot, are we going to do anything that will keep creeping commitment from people parking there and creeping into the bank's parking area?
We've left that open with the bank, and I've recommended that we actually block it off, so that we open the parking lot to the municipal parking lot, and at the far end, we put some form of barrier,
Okay.
because otherwise I think it will creep.
And yeah, I think it will. I think it'll just all creep in, and then it'll creep into Cape Cod 5. And
Yeah, the bank was willing to wait and see on that, but I pretty much advised them that that's going to be a pretty high likelihood that we have to do that.
And will there be a sign in the schoolhouse parking lot that says additional parking?
Yes.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll put that to a vote. Again, the request is, or the motion is to approve and sign the parking lease agreement, license agreement with TD Bank NA. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's a parking lot, thank you.
I improved my average. That was 1 out of 2.
I know, it's good, huh? It's good. Okay, Janelle, E, please.
Mr. Chair, I move that we accept the resignation of Bob Hartwell from the Conservation Commission and the Bylaw Charter Review Committee.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded to accept the resignation of Bob Hartwell from the Conservation Commission and the Bylaw Charter Review Committee. Discussion. Hearing none. Angela, Jen? Okay, we'll put it to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's a vote, thank you.
Just a comment.
Yeah.
We do have some applications for these positions, but we won't be able really to vote on or interview until next week or the week after. So if anybody who's interested in this, please fill out a form and turn it into the town administrator's office.
Are those vacancies as a result of Bob's resignation or anticipation of, or do you have vacancies already?
No, it's in
As a
Anticipation
recognition
of
of
this.
these two
Okay, all right, thank you.
specifically.
Okay, Janelle, F.
Mr. Chair, I move that we authorize the chair to sign the agreement between the town and Cape Net to connect the Monomoy Regional School District to the Open Cape Network through Town of Harwich conduit.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded to authorize the chair to sign the agreement between the town and Cape Net to connect Monomoy Regional School District to the Open Cape Network through the Town of Harwich conduit. Discussion? Hearing none, we'll put it to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. It's a vote. Okay, public hearings and presentations, West Harwich TIP project. We talked about this several weeks ago, I believe. And now our friends from VHB are here, along with Lincoln Hooper, to introduce them and explain where we are with the project.
We're at the very beginning of the project.
That's the first thing we wanted to hear.
We have Trish Domican here, who has taken Joe Magny's place at VHB. I know Joe did a great job for the town of Harwich, and when I see Trish, I think she's exceeded all the expectations administrators had. You know, Joe did a great job. She's Griffin Ryder here, who manages their brand new Cape office, to help out with the presentation. I'd like to just take a minute to say how this all started.
Sure.
As you know, the town has had 3 successful TIP projects. We had one that went down in flames. The administrator came in at the tail end of that project, and he was meeting with me one day, and he says, well, what else you got in the queue? And I said, I've got nothing in the Transportation Improvement Program queue. And he says, well, we should have something. It's free. They're essentially free. The program is funded by state and federal funds with the obligation to engineer and design the road system and get it to MassDOT standards, and then they supervise and pay and bid for all of its construction activities. So it's a good program. I was just unsure of where anything might fit the character of Harwich, and then I thought about that Dennis has had a TIP improvement project, of which I believe VHB is the engineer on, for quite some time. They are nearing the construction of that project, and I thought we should partner with Dennis and talk about that. Thus, we are where we are at now. Trish has a nice presentation loaded. We've had a couple of public meetings, a site walk, and a staff meeting about it, and now you're up to date. Without further ado,
Okay, now, and I'll just say, welcome, and I'll just remind everybody and introduce you to the fact, I'm sure Joe told you about it, that we became very familiar with this concept of complete streets and tried to do a hybrid of complete streets on Route 124, and it didn't go ahead successfully. On this one, as soon as, it was brought to our attention that this was up for consideration, the board's very interested in, I would just say, getting ahead of this. In other words, as far as public outreach and, identifying the people, if we got to move their house by 30 feet, I'm making this up, by 30 feet, or, what's the right of way, what's the center line of the road compared to what it is today? And are we asking, people to, even though they might put bushes in the right of way, those really aren't their bushes, if you know what I mean. So we want to get ahead of this one if we can. At the same time, not create mass hysteria and that kind of thing, but just go through it in a factual manner. We think there's a great potential to improve that area of our town. The road is one aspect of it, and the transportation aspect is one, but then there are several other things that are kicking around out there, housing and that type of thing, that will help that area, we believe. So we're very interested in this, and we're looking forward to your presentation.
one last comment. This is entirely on Route 28, which is MassDOT right-of-way.
Mhm.
So the town would be obligated to engineer this project. They do everything else, securing the right-of-way, everything else would be on MassDOT. And the reason I think this is a good idea to pursue is because Dennisport is going to have a facelift shortly.
Right.
And they already have. And I would really hate for people to drive through Dennis, a brand-new corridor, hit the town line, and realize you're in Harwich all of a
No, we
sudden.
understand. Yep,
Thank you.
we understand. So with that, Trish.
Thank you. I just want to test my very low-tech equipment to make sure it's working. Oh, perfect. As Link had mentioned, my name is Trish Domigan. I did work with Joe Magny. He was actually my boss back in the day. And now he's retired, which makes me very old. So I just want to go through a little bit of what we're looking for, what we're going to be presenting tonight. It's the project goals, the limits, existing conditions, the input, what the recommended design is based on MassDOT standards, what the process is, and then what the next steps are. As Link had mentioned, we are in the infancy of this project. I have had a brief discussion with MassDOT, and that's it. We want to make sure that the public knows about it, that we get a lot of input. A lot of projects that I do in communities, it's really important to get the public to understand what the project is and then also give us input. It's really important to have people give us their ideas or their concerns, and that's where we're at right now. So as Link had mentioned, some of the goals are to really create a destination in Harwich. West Dennis is doing an improvement, and their construction is going to start in 2017. So this could follow nicely with that project. It would be extending, the enhancements, the improvements to the roadway and the infrastructure into Harwich. It would actually provide complete streets design, and I know that's sometimes taboo, but it's kind of interesting where the sidewalk areas, you really do need sidewalks. There's complete evidence on both sides of the roadway, Main Street, that people are walking along the curb, and it's not accessible for everyone. So it's something that should be considered for this section of roadway. It would also accommodate bikes. So people would be driving on Route 28 on bike lanes. There are shoulders next to the travel lanes. The signals at Division Street would be updated. Right now, the traffic signal equipment is pretty antiquated, so that would be upgraded. And also at Upper County Road, that signal will also be upgraded as part of this. And like I said, that would be extending the improvements from Main Street and Dennis to actually the Herring River. So the project limits are about 3,500 feet in Harwich, and it goes from Division Street to the Herring River. So as I mentioned, the sidewalks themselves are in pretty bad shape. There's definite and distinct land use changes along this section of corridor. up near Division Street. It's very commercial and retail. You can see this. The shoulders themselves is about 1 to 2 feet wide. It's very narrow. There's a lot of traffic going up to the signal itself. Once you get further down the corridor down near the Herring River, you can see that there are sidewalks, but the sidewalks are extremely narrow in this area, and also the shoulders are continuing. They're very narrow. There's gateways, and you have beautiful vistas. This is the Herring River and the parking lot that goes out into it, and it's just such a lovely location. It really is a pretty spot. And you can't see it, I apologize for this slide, but there's a small sign here at the Division Street intersection that says "Welcome to Harwich," but you really can't see it because it's behind the utility pole and the sign. As Lincoln mentioned, there was a couple times that we did solicit input from the public. Last fall, we did a site walk on a beautiful day, and we walked down the corridor, and we took a look at all of the features. I had a few folks from VHB to help, and also the town was there to help out, and just to talk to the people that were interested in seeing improvements along here, and to be cautionary. You know, a lot of people want to see improvements, but they don't want to land planes on the roadway. So there were things that we took a look at, things, as you had mentioned, the bushes that may be extending out into the layout, and we described what actually was owned by MassDOT in terms of the roadway layout and what was private property. And I thought it was a great opportunity to meet the people that wanted to do the site walk, and then just get a lot of feedback. After that, we came into the office. We gathered the input that we had on the site walk. We came in, we did a brainstorming session in this room on October 27th, and we got more feedback of what the features were that should be out on the roadway itself and what they didn't want to see. And also, I do want to mention that Mr. Berry did an outstanding presentation on some of the historic features of the area. And it was really great because you can highlight the beautiful structures, the buildings, the houses that are next to the roadway by enhancing the roadway and putting on street amenities next to the houses themselves. And we got a great history lesson, too. So some of the recommended design that came out of that public outreach process was to base the designs of the roadway on the land use that was next to it. So in the more retail, more commercial area, there would be a little bit of a change for the design elements than the more residential, which would be a little bit softer, so it wouldn't be such a granite curbing and hardscape along that area. It would incorporate some of the historic features, and that was important because there's a lot. If you're driving down Main Street, you probably don't even notice it because you drive down it 100 times a day. But there are some really important fencing and bushes and things like that really have been out there for a long period of time, and using some of the photos that were sent over to us, we could replicate some of the fences or just enhance what's out there right now. Accent lighting would be installed at the Baptist Church with a more safety, a pedestrian crosswalk there because people do cross that location. There's a very good sight distance there, but also people should be aware that's driving on Main Street that there is a crosswalk there, especially at night where it's dark. Also, we would be providing gateways at both the Herring River and at Division Street. And when I say gateways, I don't mean grandiose signs, welcome to Harwich with big blinking lights, something that's subtle that actually really defines the place, so it gives it a sense of place. And that's what we talked about as part of the brainstorming session. So some of the things that we were talking about were 5-foot sidewalks, and this is in compliance with MassDOT requirements. 5-foot roadway shoulders for bike accommodations. That's something that's important. The state is really taking a look at trying to shift traffic or people away from vehicles and different modes of transportation. So that's something that they think that would encourage bike traffic on Main Street. Dennis is doing the same thing. They're not putting in as wide as shoulders, but they have bike routes around Main Street where they can't accommodate it because it's in a retail with on-street parking district. The sidewalks, there was a lot of discussion whether or not they should be concrete or cement concrete or like asphalt. It's called hot mix asphalt. And the sidewalk surface would be a little bit softer, which is asphalt. It's out there right now. All that we would be doing is repairing what's out there right now. The curbing would be sloped. If there was a grass strip between the sidewalk area, the 5-foot sidewalk, excuse me, and the roadway, it would be what's called a Cape Cod berm. So it's the sloped bituminous curbing. Where there's the retail area or the more commercial area, it would be cement concrete and then a granite curbing, something that would be a little bit more defined where the sidewalk is versus the roadway. As I had mentioned, DOT really does have a mode shift policy now. All projects that I'm working on with MassDOT has to have pedestrian and bicycle accommodations. What they do is allow for design exceptions is if there's some reason or pretty strong justification why you can't accommodate sidewalks on both sides of the street or bike accommodations. And because Main Street it's what's called a minor arterial, it requires that we do have sidewalks on both sides of the street. And again, it's trying to shift people out of their cars and into more healthy transportation modes. This is the cross-section that we came up with in the retail area. So down near Division Street, there would be HMA walkway with granite curbing on both sides. The existing right-of-way right now is about 40 feet. The travel lanes would be about 11 feet. They're about 11 feet right now. And there would be 5-foot shoulders that would accommodate bikes on either side. There would be small sliver takings, what it's called, along one side of the roadway. And as Mr. Hooper had mentioned, MassDOT is responsible for taking or securing the right-of-way. In the more residential area, there would be a sidewalk that's offset by a grass strip, so it's a softer approach to the more rigid granite curbing with the sidewalk right next to the roadway. The roadway itself would essentially be the same with the 5-foot bike lanes and 11-foot travel lanes. Oop, did I just skip over one? This is just a concept plan, a rendering that we had developed at the church area. The right-of-way here, the roadway itself is really super wide at that location. So the recommendation is to narrow it down so it's the same width all the way through the entire roadway, but also put in fencing along the property line, put in more of a plaza area right next to the roadway at the church so that when people congregate and gather for different events, they have a place to be. Right now, I don't think there's anything out there. So this would actually allow for a plaza for pedestrian activities. And also, as I had mentioned, there would be a crosswalk with some enhanced lighting along both sides. This is the green strip here is where the edge of the right-of-way is. Now, we haven't done any survey yet. This is very, very conceptual, and this is based on assessors information in MassGIS. So it's pretty approximate. But you can see there would be landscaping that would be put in, not too much. We don't want to overdo it, but we wanted to put something in here to make it more aesthetically pleasing. The sidewalk on this side, which is the south side of the roadway, would be offset from the roadway itself, as I had mentioned. So the funding process is the preparation of a project need form. I think that was included in your packet for this presentation. It's just a form that we give information to MassDOT that shows interest in the project, but that's about it. It's just so that MassDOT can assess it to see whether or not it's a viable project, and that's what was submitted to you last week. District 5 would be reviewing it and then giving you comments on that. The next step would be a project initiation form, which would address all the comments, give them a little bit more traffic data, a little bit more technical information like a construction cost estimate to go along with this. And then they would actually go to committee to decide whether or not they would support the funding through state and local means, through FHWA and MassDOT for the construction of the project. And that's about it. so.
Okay, thank you very much. I guess a couple just general questions or observations.
Sure.
Do you envision straightening the road any? We got into a problem on 124, trying to straighten the road, trying to make some safety improvements, I'll
Right.
say, that involve straightening a road. But do you see basically the center line of the existing roadway staying where it is? I mean, is it,
It would pretty much stay where it is at the, sorry, can I get back?
and I know this is preliminary, but I mean, is,
Right, so at the church, I just want to bring up that graphic again.
Yep.
It may be shifted slightly so that it's more centered, here it is, in the right-of-way. I think the roadway itself just gets really wide in here, so I can't really say that the center of the yellow center line would stay the same place. But we're trying to keep the roadway essentially in the center of the layout.
okay, but in that location, as you mentioned, it is very wide.
Yeah, so we're trying to shrink it down, and that is on a curve, so we have to take a look at the speed limit and the design speed to make sure that it fits within standards.
Right.
But it would essentially be where it is right now.
Okay, and then can you help us out? We're all riding our bikes down 28
Yep.
headed from the Herring River to Dennisport. I don't know why you want to go to Dennisport, but
Well,
we're just
it's
going
not
in.
Harwich, right?
Bucky's is there.
We
Bucky's
have
is
Bucky
there.
and Harwich.
Well, see, now we know, okay. So anyhow, I think we all know, and you mentioned a little bit, I'm not, there's brick sidewalks there, there's on-street
Right.
parking. There's no bike gonna go through there unless something major is gonna happen. So what's the
Right.
transition plan, or how do bikes go somewhere else, or?
So I apologize, this graphic isn't quite clear, but it does show it. So this is the Harwich Main Street project.
And basically you run to a fork. I mean, that's,
Right.
with Upper County Road. and,
Right. What the idea is, this is Division Street, this is Upper County, and this is Main Street, and this is the project that I was just talking about in Dennis. So what they do is, their bike plan is to come down Hall Street and go up Division and then go that way. But what we're suggesting is that you come down Hall Street, and this, again, it's just an idea.
Yeah.
Go down, is this Willow, up Belmont, and then go on the roadway up here at that point. And that way, there's no bike lanes in here because they have on-street parking, and, the buildings are where they are. So this just gives them an alternate route to get around that pinch point in here.
But you still have the bike lanes on the Harwich side.
Yep.
After going west from Willow Street, or from,
Belmont.
Belmont.
Yeah, and yes, you do need to have the shoulders here. I did speak with MassDOT about that. They reminded me kind of strongly that there's other reasons for having shoulders, snow removal, there's drainage issues, there's other things. If there's an emergency vehicle that has to pass and there's an accident, that gives just added room for emergency vehicles to go by. So because this is a main thoroughfare, they didn't say no, but they weren't amenable to having a narrower shoulder on this section of roadway.
Okay, understand. Janelle,
So,
who must go to Bucky's, by the way, because you,
Best coffee.
okay, all right.
Good to know.
So, if Willow Street and Belmont are included in the bike route, they are not Route 28. Is MassDOT still going to incur the costs and
Well, there would not be any roadway improvements on those two roadways. There would be bike signs,
Oh, okay.
something like that. But the actual roadways themselves would be town roadways, and that would not be included as part of the project.
So just a simple sign
Yeah.
directing the bikers to go,
Right,
perhaps a easier, maybe more safe way
Right.
into Dennisport.
that's right.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Angela,
I would just suggest to people from DOT ride their bikes on those two roads. It's like Lower County. You can't fit two cars going through and two bikers on the road, period. They don't fit. And one of these days, somebody's gonna get run over. I mean, we've seen bikes get knocked around. That's a,
Well, that's okay. It was just like I said, it's an idea.
not okay they get hit, don't worry.
No, it was just, it wasn't a MassDOT thing. It was my, it seemed like
you
it
don't
was a
have to
low
ride your
volume.
bike down there. I thought it was a DOT.
I'd be
vehicle.
riding my bike down. I'm a
Uh,
crazy bike person, but that was just a thought so that you could tie into the bike lane that's in Dennis,
Those roads
that's all.
kind of narrow. The
Yep.
question I have is, we were pretty much involved with 124. And we thought that was a great idea. I think this is a terrific idea. I'd love to see it happen. My concern is that we're gonna run into the same problem. And I would like to avoid everybody working for 2 or 3 years and getting our hopes up that we can get this job done. And start out up front and by letting the people who live along that road, whose property we may either want to take, or they are using the right-of-way and we'll have to take it back from them. Not a taking, it's obviously ours, and
Right.
see where they stand and what kind of a problem we're gonna run into. Because there's no sense in going through the whole drill and then it falling apart.
Right, I understand that completely.
And
We started that process with the site walk and brainstorming last year.
I think a lot of people on the sidewalk were people who were very much interested in fixing up the whole section of West Harwich. I'm not sure that they all live in properties that would be impacted. And, you know, it could be as simple as putting some stakes in approximately where the edges of the road would be and sending a letter to everybody saying on next Tuesday, come out and look in front of your house and let's talk.
Right,
Because I know that's kind of an oddity, but we're gonna get to that point sometime, and maybe we've learned something from
Right.
the 124.
I've actually done that on other projects. I think this is just an idea at this point, and as you get further along, there would be more discussions with the neighborhood to make sure they feel comfortable with the improvements. I absolutely agree with you. The staking of where the roadway is going to be, as I had mentioned, it's essentially in the same spot. But yes, that's something that could be done. There's a little bit more due diligence, essentially. We would have to do base mapping to really stake out in a concept plan, preliminary design, to actually see where the specific roadway is.
Well,
So that's something that could be considered in the future.
perhaps I misspoke. It's more than the roadway. It's the roadway, the sidewalks, it's everything.
Right.
And if it's a 50-foot roadway and we need 60 feet, we know that somewhere along the way, there's gonna be an issue.
Mhm.
And if we're better off, and it's less expensive to find out now. That's all.
It's kind of a chicken versus the egg thing.
It's a
And
chicken and
you've
an
got
egg,
this
yeah.
concept, we don't know where it's going at this point in time. You can't say for certain, here's the stake in the ground today. You can make guesses as to where it's going to be.
Right.
But there's a process here, and maybe what you describe, as the next stage in the process for VHB, as far as your engagement in the process, what your next stage would be after this goes to the state, and the state says, okay, we think we might be interested in,
So,
addressing this, if you
right,
will.
so we would not do any design, because we don't wanna spend your money either, that's just not prudent. What we would do is submit, or the board would vote to submit the PNF. We would submit it on your behalf, or the town would submit it. We would get input from MassDOT, submit the next form, which is a little bit more detail. If that gets approved, then the first step would be to prepare base mapping, some survey, some on-the-ground topo, and determine where the actual property line is, where the roadway layout is, and then develop a concept plan, where exactly the roadway, not only just the roadway, but where the edges of the sidewalks are and things like that. At that point, you could stake out where specifically the sidewalk could be.
And approximately, without holding you to it, how much time, calendar time is involved in getting to that stage, and about how much money? You have any idea?
I can't tell you how much money, but I can tell you, did you want to say something, or do you want me
No,
to
go ahead,
continue?
finish your thought.
Okay, the next, when the state goes to committee and reviews the information to see whether or not they're going to support this project moving ahead, is November. So it's a pretty good timeframe for them to get to the stage where this project would get approved by MassDOT. The survey would happen after that point.
Okay, one concept is we could have a public hearing or two, and invite Tricia and her team back down and make some presentations and advertise the
Right.
fact we want to talk about it. and get some input. We could even think about having a meeting at the church or something, if that made sense, to get more people involved. I don't know. Chris?
Yeah, I just wanted to, I did come in on the
Sorry.
tail end of 124, and, the message I got loud and clear was, get out in front. But I think it's important that it wasn't just interested people that went on that site walk with us. I believe people that live in the neighborhood joined us. So what we're trying to do is to get to some kind of concept. I think it's hard to, as we were going around, I had one of the business owners came out and said, why are there 30 people on my front lawn? So I went in and said, well, this is what we're thinking about, this is what we're talking about. But if you don't have anything to show them, any concept plans, it's kind of hard to be able to articulate. So the way I see this process is this is kind of the next logical step in the continuing of education for the neighborhood, to let them know. And this time out, there's really not that many, properties that are there, and we could set up neighborhood meetings or just do like we did, almost go door to door. The trouble with this day and age is send out a mailer to people, and people just don't read the material. But I think when you have people walking down the street, when you're actually there, when you get newspaper stories that, highlight what you're doing, we're trying to do the engagement with the idea of minimizing the cost. We don't want to invest the, whatever it was, the 200,000 that we spent in 124. Let's make sure we get buy-in well shy of that before we go. But that's the idea behind this.
Yeah. Linda?
The conceptual design, is that also called the 25% design?
No.
This is
So
in advance of that.
that would be it works towards it. So what we could do is, the first thing that you do is set the baseline and then build the roadway from that. And then you get the edges of the sidewalk. And then there's a lot of incidental things that have to go to a 25% design submittal. But the specific roadway alignment and development of the edge of sidewalk to edge of sidewalk could be done in advance to that.
I just wanted to, thank you.
You're
I
welcome.
just wanted to comment back to Chris, which is on the Route 124 thing, we did have newspaper articles, we did have hearings, we did have all of this. Yes, Link? And when it still came down to, this was the 25% design, and it hit people that their azalea bushes, their driveways, all the stuff that was going to be impacted became reality. So while we may have all of that, I can't stress enough the stakes in the lawn. Because no matter how many mailings you do, until somebody sees a pea green fluorescent stake in their lawn that says, this could potentially go out to here, it's all gonna be noise.
Right.
There's gonna have to be those stakes done as soon as possible before we spend a ton of money on this. Because otherwise, the neighborhood is not the same as the people who, necessarily the same as the people who own the property down 28. And so I can't stress enough
Sure.
the stakes bit. I mean, seriously.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Angela?
Just a question. What is the width of the current road right away?
40 feet.
40 feet. The road that, with the bike,
Well, let me take that back. It varies between 40 and 80. It's 80 feet, right?
75 or 80 through that big curve
Okay.
In front of the church,
okay, but the rest of it is
about
like 40 feet?
Yeah.
The road that would be designing, that has the 2 bike paths, the 2 sidewalks in the road,
Yep.
is how wide?
So 42 feet? 11?
32,
I can't-
42.
So,
You'd need a 2-foot land taking
So-
in the narrow areas.
okay, well, that's only part of it. That's true in terms of taking. But the question is, how much of the road space is used now physically?
A lot.
Okay, well, those are things we can calculate, because if right now we're using 40 feet of the road space, which I doubt, then it's only 2 feet and people might be able to deal with it. But
Right.
since you
So-
know the widths of the road, I would suggest that,
Well, this is a great picture, if I could interrupt and send that existing conditions. See the sign on the left-hand side?
Right here.
I mean, at the center, if the center, okay, but if the center of the roadway stays where it is,
Right.
it's pretty apparent that sign's going away, right?
Yeah, it'll have to be moved back a smidge.
And that tree might be gone as well, I don't know, but, I
Yeah.
mean, it depends on the detailed
Right.
measurements.
So this bush line here is within the layout, so the actual layout is behind it.
Yeah.
This is has
Yeah.
grown into
But
it.
that's the
why
type of stuff we're talking about in
Right.
terms of the staking.
Oh, I
be-
understand.
That's the concept. The
Yeah,
road
you-
right-of-way isn't the concept, it's
Right, I
my
think we
road.
all understand, yes, I think we all understand that there's a right-of-way that is owned by the public. It's X feet, blah, 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 and people have planted their azalea bushes in it. And that's really the issue here. I
Right.
mean, the Route 124 was a hoop-de-doo to beat all hoop-de-doos.
Oh, I've heard a lot. Yeah, we would definitely get out and talk to the neighborhood and, you know, get their input and make them understand what exactly the intent is.
And
Yeah,
put
yeah.
the stakes in the ground, because you can tell somebody all you want, but until they see that fluorescent stake in the middle of their yard, in back of their azalea bushes, or a tree, or that line of bushes, it's,
Yeah, and I do think that, and Duncan's behind you there, and probably wants to talk in a second, but I do think through his network, or the network they put together on the Captain's Row, which is, you know, on this section of 28, I think there's good means to communicate with people, to get people continually informed about what's going on, but hopefully to draw some people out, you know, in public meetings and that type of thing, more so than we had initially, at least on 124. So, anybody, hang on, anybody else? Okay, Duncan, did you have something you wanted to say, or I'll open up to the public with any comments, just,
Yeah, just, I just wanted to say that I think we can work hand in glove with the residents that are on the strip here, and that our great belief, and my personal belief, is the more we have empirical physical evidence, like the kind that Linda's talking about, as well as kind of visual stuff. And we've taken it upon ourselves to fund an architectural competition so we can have some visualizations, and with the stipulations in mind here, that the town doesn't have to carry the burden or the engineering costs or what have you. We can kind of rally support among us internally and, you know, town-wide to see, oh, this is the way it might look. These are good hypotheticals. So between that and kind of the usefulness of our social media group, I think we've got a much different scenario. Oh, and also considering this is a much more kind of moderate change of state from the 124, which was a much more kind of a dramatic exercise. So I think new communication strategies, new visualization strategies, a different project. I don't think you're going to necessarily have to expect worst case scenario output.
okay.
But
well,
as soon as I can get kind of these stats, I'm writing up the brief for the competition. So the more we can include reality in this, the better off we all would be. And I think, you know, but we've got a lot of enthusiastic people in the town right now.
So Trish, just for my edification, the Dennisport side, on 28, now we recognize you're gonna jump across or go through, you know, the little retail section there, but on the other side, how far is the project going on the other side, do you know?
It goes to the Dennis Commons development,
okay?
which is, you know, around the curve from Factory Shoe Mart.
Okay,
And then after-
okay.
Right, and then after that, they're going to be extending it out again. Do you know what the other limits are?
I'm not sure the other one.
Yeah, so they're actually continuing down Main Street.
Okay, and it's only on
Beyond that
28,
point.
and there's no, are they going up Upper County Road at all?
I think just a small amount.
Okay, just 28.
not a- Yeah,
Just to get out of the triangle there, maybe?
yeah, right.
Okay,
Beyond the gas, or the former gas station, right.
okay. So going beyond the retail section west, they'll have a complete street, or that's the concept anyhow? or-
Yes, yep.
Okay. All right. Anything else, Lincoln? You,
Oh, Jesus.
what?
Didn't mean to scare you there, Trish. Dennis's current project ends where, before you get to,
Before you get to Divisions, it's
Yeah.
almost like at the Upper County intersection.
at the Upper County intersection. Their current approved project doesn't tackle either of those intersections, one being entirely in Dennis and one being at Division Street, which is half ours, half theirs. This project would partner, they would take care of the remainder of their roadway and take care of those two intersections with us partnering for our intersection. If any of you have headed west during the summer there, you know that intersection, despite what it says in P&F, is not a service level that's acceptable. You can sit for 20 minutes getting through that intersection. I'd like to see that all modernized, which would probably take care of that traffic jam there in the summer.
Okay, Link, just while you're there.
Yes, sir.
Do we have any drainage issues that exist now in that section of roadway?
That's Route 28, sir.
Okay, I'm
It's-
just
I-
asking.
I'm not aware of any, but again, this is Route 28, so we don't go out and service the drains, we don't dig them, we
Understand.
don't service
This
any
is
maintenance.
relatively flat compared to what we're dealing with on 124, going up the hill and down the hill and that type of thing.
We have elevation here as well,
Yeah,
so not to my knowledge.
Okay, all right.
Quick
good to know.
question, since you
Yeah.
brought it up, for you, both of you, I guess. Concerning the traffic light there at Division, and yes, you can wait and wait and wait, and it can back up all the way to Bell's Neck Road. That being said, would there be consideration to even widen the intersection more so that there could be 2 lanes, one turning left and going straight, and the other right and going straight?
I'll let the engineer address that. I think you have to look, when you engineer an intersection, you have to look at all alternatives and put everything on the table from what's there now, roundabout, whatever, and dismiss those at various levels. One thing's for sure, we'd have an intersection that functions a lot better.
That would also change, though, the width of the road there, correct? If we had to have those extra lanes?
Yes and no. You have a lot of constraints there. That there's the gas station that's there. On the opposite side of the street, there's the Friendlies is right there, right? The old Friendlies. There's
Sierra.
7-Eleven.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
there's not really much room to widen it out. So what we would have to do is take a look at what makes that intersection work the best with the room that you have, and try to do as much as we can within that limited space right there. And then in terms of the drainage, there may not be any historical flooding issues there, but when we did the site walk, a lot of the catch basins were really deep compared to where the roadway is now, so there was like at least a foot or 2. So they're probably collapsing, and the drainage system itself probably needs to get reconstructed.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
That intersection, I believe both those intersections are simply timed intersections, not loop controlled, not computer controlled. So it gives you the same thing in the winter as it does the summer, unlike modern intersections that you adjust to your load.
Right, I think those are
And
some of
that's
the
what we-
original traffic lights. in
Yes, I
both,
believe so.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, and we appreciate you coming down. Brooke, do you have a question?
Yes, actually, Brooke Williams, West Harwich. I live on the east side of the river. And I guess there are a couple of sort of conceptual questions, because this is a conceptual presentation. The first is that there are a number of issues mentioned in the report, and I think a lot of those issues could apply to both sides of the Herring River. On the east side of the Herring River, the Selectmen chose to essentially have develop sidewalks in over time. And this side, we're going, or looking at doing a long stretch in this particular way. And I think one of the problems on 124 was not really looking early enough in all the options that were available. And I think that in this particular case, conceptually, it was been described as bringing, Dennisport to the Herring River. And I would almost question in terms of conceptually why we wouldn't think of bringing the Herring River to the Dennis line, and that we have a wonderful natural resource. And as you come to the Harwich border from Dennisport, the Dennisport area, and they've been doing a lot of effort to rejuvenate it, but they don't really have any old trees or landscaping and so forth. So they're not really working with the same palette of materials that we have in West Harwich. And it seems to me that they also had a comprehensive planning process where they went to town meeting, had a number of things approved. And tonight we even have people in the audience who had a lot of questions about some of the plans in West Harwich. And it would seem to me that looking at the option, one of sort of bringing Dennisport to the Harwich, the Herring River is one, but the other would be bringing the Herring River to the Dennis line. And you showed the gateway, which at the Chase Library, where there are a number of very attractive plantings, tying that in, and then perhaps looking at the tips, the complete streets, but perhaps looking at the approach that was done east of the river might be worth consideration. And I think especially also Duncan's been working on the historic aspects, that yes, the impacts of the road on these historic structures and on people's perception of them, because if you widen something, you're going to speed the traffic up. And I would refer the consultants to integrating sustainability into the transportation process. This was the Transportation Research Board of the National Academies from 2005, and there was a conference held in 2004. And I think that there's two sections, Land and Community by Elizabeth Deacon, and then Habitat and Ecosystems by Richard Foreman. In reading the report, there was a lot of mention of east and west, and you get to the Heron River, but there's also an important north-south. We have Bell's Neck to the north, and on Depot, that's an access to Bell's Neck. And then the south, it goes Belmont all the way to the beach, and there has been coordination between Dennis and Harwich at Chase Road and Belmont, where you can actually access the beach. And so I think that there are perhaps more options that have been looked at. And the other point is that it was mentioned going on Willow, but the town is, in its capital plan, is now working on Lower County, and the notion we'd be creating two pedestrian or ways at the same time, I think there's a question about that. But I think, again, I think looking at it conceptually of coming from the Herring River to the Dennis line may be an alternative worth considering.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, thank you very much. More to come on that one. We'll move on to old business. Ballot questions tomorrow, as I mentioned. Thank you.
Hi.
I'm sorry.
I think there's one other thing is, I think you need to vote on whether or not to move forward with the PNF.
You want us to submit the PNF,
Yes.
project notification form.
We're not listed on here to vote for that. It was just a presentation, so we would bring it back.
Okay, all right,
Okay. You don't necessarily have to be here for that, but I mean, we'll bring it
Okay.
back.
great, thank you
We
very
have
much.
a practice of listing if we're going to vote on something or potentially vote on something or not. Thank you again. Okay, next on our old business, tomorrow, as I mentioned up front, May 17th is Election Day in the town. Polls open at the Community Center from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Obviously, we encourage everybody to go vote, but there's a ballot that the selectmen put together, and items are voted at town meetings. So I just want to run through those. Ballot question number 1, shall the town of Harwich be allowed to exempt from the provisions of Proposition 2.5, so-called the amounts required to pay for the bonds issued to fund the reconstruction of the Sacotucket Municipal Marina docks, piles, and services, to include a handicapped accessible ramp system that brings the marina in compliance with the Americans with Disability Act, ADA, and dredging of approximately 12,500 cubic yards of material to bring the marina within permitted depth. And your choices are yes or no if you want to do that. This is a $7 million total project, $1 million from the Seaport grant. And we've had on numerous occasions the Waterways Committee and the Harbor Master here to work through what I would say is, under all scenarios, that approximately 75% of this cost will be borne by those fees that are generated associated with the harbors. So we're not asking the taxpayers to foot this whole thing. There's a huge percentage of it, very large percentage, that would be covered by what goes on down at the harbors. So, Angelo?
I'm glad you brought that up. I've run into a number of people in the last week who are concerned with this project costing the taxpayers $7 million. It doesn't, and I think it's important that everybody knows it. We start off with $7 million being needed. There's a $1 million grant that makes it $6 million. The fees from waterways is going to cover 75%. That gets it. That's $4.5 million of the total $7 million, which means that the public will be responsible for $1.5 million over 20 years to fix Saquatucket Harbor, which is in great need of being fixed. The problem is it doesn't have the numbers in the ballot questions because it can't be there. It's not that we didn't want to have it there, it just can't be from state regulations. So if you see anybody, please tell them or ask them if they would vote for this project and explain the numbers to them.
Okay. Anybody else? John? John Rendon, Harbor Master. Probably voting yes on this topic.
You will be voting yes?
No, I said I'm assuming you're voting yes.
I will vote yes.
All right, thank you, I appreciate it.
Thanks. I just want to make one point regarding the 75% that will come out of harbor fees. I think it's important also to know that the budget will be unaffected by this 75% that will be put towards the harbor cost over the 20-year period. It's coming out of new revenue that will be generated as a result of the upgrade of the marina, which would add 11 additional slips. It'll come from new revenue generated by a modest rate increase, and the other funds will come from existing harbor receipts reserve funds that are already collecting fees that go back into the harbor. So there's nothing coming out of the general fund or the town's budget that would affect anything else as we move forward, and I think that's important to know.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, anybody else on this topic? Okay, ballot question number 2. Shall the town of Harwich be allowed to exempt from the provisions of Proposition 2.5, so-called, the amounts required to pay for the bonds issued to fund the road maintenance program as requested in the capital plan for fiscal year 17? Chris, I don't know if you have anything to say on that. Lincoln, did Lincoln leave? He's
Left.
gone.
Lincoln left.
Okay. This is our road maintenance program.
Yeah, maybe just to reiterate from last week, in terms of this, we have a program where we anticipate spending about $1.4 million a year in order to keep the roads up to a certain level. I think that plan has been effective, certainly in my short time here, but I think even over a longer period. Last year, we had a lesser amount because we got additional money in what's called Chapter 90, which is state direct aid to the cities and towns. This year, we received about $700,000, just shy of $700,000, and this would be the match that the town has historically done. We do it as a debt exclusion, so we do it for about a 5-year period of time. As debt falls off, we can add new debt on to try to keep that level fairly consistent.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else on that topic? Okay, and the third ballot and final ballot question is a non-binding advisory ballot question regarding the Harwich Middle School. As the Board of Selectmen has been deliberating for the last couple of years as to what uses to make of the old Harwich Middle School building, we're trying to get some direction, sense of direction through this non-binding ballot question. And there are 4 options. And it says here for the question, the Board of Selectmen is evaluating the options for the reuse or sale of the Harwich Middle School building, which currently costs the town $125,000 annually for maintenance, and is seeking voter input on 4 options, any of which will require a future action of town meeting. So it's a non-binding question. Any of these would require something to be brought to town meeting for action. And then maybe subsequently after that, a ballot question as well. It says, please vote for only one option. Let's hope everybody reads and understands that. You're only allowed to vote for one of these. Well, you can vote for none, I guess, but you're only allowed to vote for one. I'm not sure what happens if you vote for more than one, but
Ballot probably gets tossed.
probably does. That would be up to the town clerk. So the first option, do you favor the retention of the Harwich Middle School building, changing the use to a mixed municipal-private use, such as a relocated town hall and private organization leased area for community activities, which has, hang on a second, I got my computer to work, which has an estimated cost of $11,476,000 for a full upgrade of the available 79,700 square feet of space, and an estimated annual operation and maintenance cost of $250,000. No additional town employees are included in these cost estimates, and this option includes the sale of the existing town hall. Second one, do you favor demolition of the Harwich Middle School building and retention of the land for future general municipal use, which has a current estimated cost to the town of $800,000 for demolition and site restoration? Third option, do you favor the sale of the Harwich Middle School building and the land for affordable or senior housing purposes to an outside developer, for which the town previously received an offer for $672,000, with real estate taxes estimated at $20,000 to $30,000 per year? And 4, do you favor the retention of the Harwich Middle School building to be leased or sold as is, for the purpose of a self-sustaining private organization, cultural and/or community center, or educational use. So those are the 4 options. We hope people take the time to read these. Hopefully they take the time to read them before they go in to the voting booth and make their choice. Again, it's a non-binding question. We're trying to get some sense of direction, even if we eliminate 2 of the options or something like that, that allows us to focus more of the efforts on how to go forward with this. Janelle?
I would, like Angela was making clear about question 1, I'd like to also clarify something on option 4.
Sure.
The group of citizens who have preliminarily proposed a cultural center are very amenable to the town rec or other organizations still utilizing the middle school building for programs they already are utilizing it for or future endeavors. Unfortunately, that did not get put into the explanation. So again, if you could maybe educate people that that is actually part of question 4, or not question 4, option 4. That would be good for them to know that by voting for it, you're still allowing the town to use the building.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else on this? Okay, so those are the three ballot questions, and we'll see how we do tomorrow. Okay, thank you. All right, next on the roll of business, town administrator's 2-year contract extension. As required by the previous contract, or existing contract, I should say, of the town administrator back in March, actually, if I remember correctly, before March 30th, the board was to decide whether or not they wanted to take action to extend the town administrator's contract. If we had done nothing, been silent on the topic, it would have been extended by 1 year automatically. The board voted to extend the contract by 2 years. Subsequent to that, in April, we had town administrator's performance review. Angela, thank you very much for the job you did in consolidating all that and putting all that information together. As a result of that performance review, the board looked at the existing clause in the town administrator's contract as to whether or not we would authorize the 2% cost of living adjustment. And the board voted at that time to, I'll just say, freeze the salary, if you will, and benefits of the town administrator. So what you have before you tonight is Copeland and Page has prepared a 2-year extension of the contract that keeps the salary, at least for this coming year, level. Everything else, I believe, Chris, in here is the same as it exists. Is that right?
Yeah, just to clarify, the only thing that was changed was the dates for the 2-year extension. By contract, if I receive less than a satisfactory, which I did, then I'm not entitled to a cost of living increase. And so that's where that language hasn't changed, so it wouldn't necessarily be frozen. It would just, because I didn't achieve the satisfactory, the level would remain where it is.
Okay. Linda?
Section 8, moving expenses. That should still stay in, yes, no?
This is just an extension, so the original had that in there and it's already been utilized, because I did move down to Cape Cod, so I wouldn't be able to use it a second time.
Got it, so it says up to a maximum of, so that's just
Been
sitting
done.
there.
That was, yeah.
Second question,
Okay.
if I may, Peter. Does it make sense to have to tell an employee 3 months before the end of an agreement whether or not it's going to continue, but then do a performance review the next month? So, what are you giggling for?
It doesn't make any sense to me at all.
So, I would like to have a discussion on number 11, is that should we be giving the performance review in March? So that if we are not going to continue a contract, make changes, salary increases and everything, we have a basis for it, which would be the personnel review, the performance evaluation.
And also, didn't we agree that we would do a 6-month from the beginning of, or the extension date?
That's right.
Yes,
Right,
which is
so
not
we
in
need to
here
add
either.
that in there as well.
With an option of 2%
They had,
pay raise.
Well, I think what we said was we would look at it, I'll say midterm, And the board at that time could do what it wants to do, quite frankly. Can't go down, but if we elected either, I think even Linda mentioned potentially going retroactively or whatever, it doesn't necessarily have to be cost of living or whatever. I mean, it could be whatever at that point in time. So I think you're okay there. I guess the question does become whether you want to address it now or later, but the April one is recognize the fact that it's, you know, if you start doing March, you're in the middle of all this budget stuff, and it's just a lot of stuff going on. Unfortunately, it says, there's a trigger point that says if you don't do something by the end of March, it automatically extends. So that's the topic. Michael?
I think because we're doing a contract extension, we're locked to what it says. We're not doing a new contract. So the only piece that I saw was that we had decided to do the 6-month performance evaluation. And if you look at number 15, under I think it's under termination, give me a second. Number 15, no, number 15, entire agreement. So this contract embodies the whole agreement between the board and the town administrator. Because we voted to do a 6-month performance evaluation, it should be in the contract. Chris, any thoughts on that?
I think that where the language is that it's based upon a performance review, if, basically what the board did was they did the performance review without a final outcome yet. So it's a needs for improvement, but 6-month look back. I think as long as that's clear, which is clear in my mind, that that's what is being done, I don't think the contract needs to be changed. I think the board's vote was pretty clear in terms of that.
Okay, good.
So my understanding is that we did the performance evaluation. It wasn't a satisfactory performance evaluation, therefore we didn't give the 2% cost of living increase. Right. We did agree that rather than wait 1 more year to do another performance evaluation and give them a 2% for the following year, we said we'll do it in 6 months, giving them a 2% cost of living increase from that moment on.
Right.
So whether that's a separate agreement,
I think it should be in here.
I don't care whether it's a separate agreement or in there. It's got to be in writing, because otherwise we'll forget it, or other people will forget
well,
that
I
it
think
exists.
15 is fairly clear that that's basically,
That's it. It says everything. It's not there.
I think
if
it
it's
has to
not
be in
there, we don't do a 6-month evaluation.
Yeah, so I think we should put a sentence in, or a paragraph, or another letter, side letter,
Well, okay.
just to protect the town
I'd
administrator.
rather not have side letters.
I
I'd rather have
think-
it all in.
Okay, I think that, you know, having gone through this process now twice with the process we used, which is the score sheet, one of the things I would like to see this board do fairly soon is sit down with the town administrator and figure out there's a better way to go through it, some way that's a little, I won't say easier, but more straightforward for everybody on all sides of this, and see if we can't come up with a more rational way of doing it, if you will. And then a clear criteria as to what do you want to call it, successful, you know, whatever term we want to use as far as what triggers any kind of an adjustment, if you will, would be a good thing to have. I think at any point in time, as long as the town administrator would agree, you know, last year we quarterly went through the goals and objectives that the town administrator has established. Maybe this time through we'll all spend a little more time looking at it and whatnot, and trying to take corrective action, et cetera, as we go along. But coming up with those goals and objectives obviously are a key first step in moving forward. So, you know, if someone wants to put in here that we do a performance review of some sort, what's 6 months? By the end of December, I would say. That'd be a rational. So maybe what you want to say that at the board's option, and in agreement with the town administrator, or if all parties agree, a mid-year performance review would take place on or before the end of December, something like that.
Maybe January rather than December?
Well, then you start bumping up against the April, so I mean, you know,
Sorry.
6 months.
Right, okay.
it might even be early than that, and pick a time, you know, October. Maybe October's the right time to do it.
I think 6 months, so December, end of December.
Okay, so let's just talk about this for a second. Chris, number one, would you have any problem or issue with the board doing a 6-month?
Well, I'm a little bit concerned. I have no problem, obviously, the board's taking its action in terms of performance review. I do, just in terms of that, I think that, performance review was anticipated to be done through June 30th. There's several deadlines that were on there that were June 30th, so I would like to have an opportunity to provide additional information. I'm a little concerned that if we want to make an amendment to the contract tonight, and let's hope that the two board members get back in this consistency, but if there's not, then where does that leave me? So I would ask that the board vote the 2-year extension, and certainly I understand that the intent is, and we could have it as an amendment to this and craft it up so the board can sign it, that for this year, the performance evaluation at this point is a below satisfactory, and that in December 1st, or whatever date the board wants, I think is more, we can stay out of the budget process, the better.
Linda?
I don't think it's the board's intent. The board took a vote that we wanted to do a 6-month review, so it's not an intent, it's a vote. I'd be okay with making a motion to have the contract accepted with the stipulation that within, by next week, no matter who's elected to the board, by the end of next week, that there was a one-page addendum that says there will be a performance evaluation by December 31st. I'd be okay with that, or I'd be okay with handwriting it in under number 11, and then we just all sign it. I don't see a problem with that either. I don't know how formal we need to get about this, but I do feel strongly that if the board made a decision and a vote that said we're supposed to be doing a performance evaluation mid-year, then that should be in this agreement somewhere.
Excuse me, and I would just say that mid-year, since right now we got to do it by the end of April, that end of April is the start of the new year. Beginning of May is the start of the new year when you're thinking about it, so I
So
don't
make
think
it
it's
November,
yeah,
whatever.
or whatever it is.
Whatever.
October 31st or something like that.
Yeah, I was gonna say November 1st.
There's not enough time to get, we have to come up with objectives.
Yeah.
We have to agree that they're the right objectives, and then they have to be worked on. So it's got to be at least December. Otherwise, there's no, I would think, there's no way just to get the job done, I would think.
Well, my suspicion is that since a lot of the issues we had in the last performance review had to do with communication with the board, that type of thing, that as we do our goals and objectives, and town administrator does his, there'll be a lot of focus on how to improve that on both sides, I guess, right? And so I would think that'd be a major focus of what we're looking to get a sense of whether that's improving or not to our satisfaction by whatever point in time. Michael? Janelle, I'm sorry.
I have a few things.
Yep.
Going back to what Linda said about the moving expenses, I disagree that this is actually an extension of a contract because the dates are clearly May 2016 to, July 1st, 2016 to June 30th, 2018. So it's not an extension of a contract, it is a new contract. I think we need to remove the moving expenses completely. And then the other thing, that it's minor, but your address, Chris, is still Southbridge. I think that should reflect Sturbridge.
Yeah, I need to update to the Barnstable address.
Yeah. That's my 2 cents, in addition to the 6-month needing to
Okay,
be in
Michael.
there.
We voted as a board to extend the contract.
Yep,
So
exactly.
we didn't vote to create a new contract. So that's just my point. And then on the 6-month evaluation, we did an evaluation, it was unsatisfactory grade, so he doesn't get the raise. The contract says we do a yearly extension, so we should, I think as a separate item, probably do a motion for the 6-month evaluation and continue, if it's a passing grade, then he gets 2% from that point forward. Because we did the contract extension and voted that, and the performance evaluation was for the year, granted it's early, to me, it's still a 6-month period that we were voting to do the next, and that would be from the beginning of the new contract, in my eyes.
Yeah, the contract extension.
Hey, guy.
Right.
So the verbiage in this contract clearly states that every year we are voting on whether to extend the contract. So it's always going to be a contract extension.
No, it's a 2-year contract.
Well, okay, so you're right, excuse me, but every April, I should say. So the verbiage is never going to allow us to have a new contract. It's always going to be an extension.
Typically, that's what you'd end up with unless you voted for something else. So,
Okay, so how do we get rid of the moving expenses?
I think we just agree to get rid of the moving expenses. I think that's an editorial thing more than anything else. Would anybody disagree with taking out the moving expenses? You guys okay with that?
Yeah.
All right, so, you know, following along Michael's suggestion and Janelle's as well, if we just get rid of the moving expenses, Chris, and renumber things, we could vote to put this in place, and based on our previous vote to say we're gonna, you know, really look at this and we wanna revisit this in 6 months as far as any adjustments go and performance evaluation at that point in time, we can do that subsequently.
I think that's fine, but the other thing we could do is have a motion to create a new contract for the next 2 years. It should take 2 seconds to do that. Because you know, based on this one.
Whatever you draw this.
No, you do it, that's fine. I'm just trying to, we've made this more difficult than I think.
Well, we call it a contract extension. This says employment agreement between Christopher Clark and the town of Harwich. I mean,
That's fine.
and it's entered into this day, whatever day we do it, on May 2016. And it goes through the items. The one item that I have heard that, you know, we have some druthers about is, do you leave the moving expenses in or not? They've already been expended,
Already
so
been
it
paid.
doesn't matter, quite frankly. And then you go from there. The question then becomes, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do with the concept that we voted on to say mid-year, let's call it mid-year, that we will look at the town administrator's performance relative to whatever goals and objectives we mutually establish. And at that point, we would at least look at or consider whether there's any compensation adjustment at that point in time.
Well-
Right? So we did?
You could add into number 11, in year 1, the evaluation will occur 6 months after the start of the contract.
The evaluation or an
And
evaluation?
evaluation.
An evaluation will be held in the first year in December, by the end of December.
We're gonna do 2 then.
And then we're going to do 2.
That's what you're saying, if you do that. So you're gonna do one by the end of December, you're gonna do one by the end of April.
Yep.
It's mighty close, folks.
Why don't we say an end of November? You don't think that's enough time?
That's just my opinion. I can't prove anything.
You know what I think we should do?
December's usually-
Quite frankly, what I think we should do, just my recommendation, you vote this as it is, change the address. We come back, and we as a board put an agenda item that says, okay, we gotta set goals and objectives, we gotta get the town administrator's goals and objectives, we gotta agree to what's gonna try and transpire here in the next 6 months and a year. We set a date for a mid-year performance evaluation, and we give ourselves and the town administrator latitude of saying at that point in time, as we have voted previously, that if a salary adjustment is warranted, we would consider at that point in time. I mean, we voted that before, right?
Right.
We voted the contract extension contingent upon that, though. So it has to be in here, right, legally? What, doesn't that make sense? I would think if it was contingent upon, it needs to be put in black and white. And maybe we need to speak with council about that.
Council prepared this, so
Did they know about our contingent vote?
they knew, I'm not sure the word contingent, I have to see how it reads in the minutes, whether it's contingent or not. I don't think it was contingent, I think it was a vote to say we would review the town administrator's performance evaluation, or do a performance evaluation mid-year, whatever that was.
I thought it was contingent upon. I don't know, that's what I thought. Did you think that, Angelo? You did. Mm-hmm.
Just give me a minute.
I think we've
Michael's
gotten all
looking it up.
tied up in
Yeah.
minor stuff.
I know.
But you have
get
to
the
be,
minutes?
you have to dot your i's and cross your t's with,
What do the
with
minutes say?
contracts.
This document says it's an employment agreement, period.
Chairman,
We extended the 2
Good.
years.
Michael.
Chairman Hughes reported that Mr. Clark's contract expires on June 30th, and the board needs to take action by March 30th, or the contract will automatically extend for a year. Mr. Lamantia moved to extend the contract for Chris Clark for 2 additional years, benefits and salary changes to be dependent on performance evaluations. That was the motion.
No time frame.
No time frame.
That's the minutes.
This
But-
is the minutes of Angelo's
Yeah,
motion
but
we all
then-
voted.
Melinda did a 6-month,
That was at the next meeting, but the minutes for this contract said, all it said basically was that it was, so we can vote this contract. It said it was based on performance, which it is anyway, it's already in there. The 6-month thing is separate. And we came up with that at another meeting, and we should just come back with some thought and agree on
All right.
that evaluation.
I think we have to think it through. We
Okay.
just,
Fine.
so is that your motion?
I would make, if you just give me a minute to get back to this. All right. Business. Where is it, Peter?
Town administrators do your contract
Yep.
extension.
I move that we approve the town administrator's 2-year contract extension with the change of cost of living being removed, moving.
No, moving expenses.
Moving
eliminated.
expenses being eliminated,
Hang on a
Section
sec.
8.
Section 8.
And the address being corrected.
and the address being corrected.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded to approve the extension of the employment agreement between Chris Clark and the town of Harwich. And it would be extended until June 30th, 2018, just to be specific. So the term of this particular extension is from July 1st, 2016 through June 30th, 2018, which is a 24-month period of time, with the exception that item number 8, which addresses moving expenses, be deleted, and any other sections renumbered accordingly, I would say. Okay?
Address, he said. He also said the address.
Yeah, I said address.
Oh, excuse me.
I'm sorry, I
Hear
thought I
that.
said address.
Sorry
Okay?
about that.
Okay, moved and seconded, further discussion? We'll put it to a vote, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The vote, thank you.
Just a comment.
Yep.
You mentioned the score sheet and somebody sitting down with the town administrator. Who would you like to sit down with the town administrator? And this is important because this same score sheet is being used throughout town hall, correct? So everybody is being scored the
Yeah,
same way.
I think, not to be presumptive, but I think we have to wait till after the election.
Okay.
And let's just say early after the election, within a meeting or two, we should sort out who's gonna do what. But you're absolutely right. We need to do that. We need to put some focus on it.
And I think that it's not so much the score sheet, it's the verbiage that's on the side, because I don't think the score sheet probably isn't the issue. It's the verbiage. So you understand what it is you're scoring.
Yeah, okay. All right, next, under new business, draft memorandum agreement with the water commissioners on solar revenue. Chris, you want to take this one?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The board had inquired about trying to have a more formal arrangement with between the selectmen and the water commissioners in regards to the share of the solar revenues. So I drafted up, and this really is draft, so if the board wants to make any changes, certainly more than happy to adjust it. But basically, what we had put together is to have that the allocation of current meter usage for the water department totaled 47% of total town usage. It is agreed by both parties that this 4753 allocation shall be retained for 5 years. Readjustment will occur in fiscal year '21. During fiscal year 2020, the accounting department shall undertake a review of the actual meter readings for the water department meters. All other town meters and derive a percentage based upon this methodology. The implementation of the new percentage would be included in fiscal year '21. The second, the finance department is responsible on a monthly basis to record the actual revenues that come down from the CVAC agreement. The finance department will each year deduct $2,000. I put that in there. I have not had a final conversation with the accountant to get a sense from him or the finance director to see if that number is accurate or not. I would like to have his input. As part of the administrative costs of the water enterprise account, I know there was some costs that we, some concern, and I agree with this, that we do not assess any of the, well, we don't assess the water department for our going through that, our being the administration and specifically the finance department. So that $2,000 reflects that effort, level of effort to accomplish that. And then both parties agree that this would be operational considerations related to the power purchase agreement and the allocation of cash credits to the memorandum of understanding shall commence retroactive to July 1st, 2015. I have not, this has not been sent to the Water Commission in any way, shape, or form. I just wanted to make sure that the selectmen are at least comfortable with this before. And I think Selectman McCaskill had mentioned about if the board's comfortable with it, then I'm happy to attend one of their meetings. I think Mike is the liaison to go down and present this to them and see how that goes over. I have had at least some discussions so that they know that this would be coming in some kind of shape or form, but nothing formally other than some conversation.
Okay, Chris, just my initial comments. I would make sure it's very specific to the landfill solar project or system, if you will.
Okay.
That's what we're talking about. I would make sure that it talks about, in item 1 where it says actual meter usage, I would say actual meter energy usage, because that's what you're, it's not power, it's energy, so let's just put the word energy. I would also somewhere in here state that off-taker revenues are excluded in this cost sharing, if you will, or however you want to phrase that. It's very clear in the calculations that the town gets the benefit of the off-takers, if you will. And then I just asked, making this retroactive to July 1st, 2015, are there monies available somewhere that
Well, we've
shifts
already
this
done the
around?
allocation, so I thought it just makes sense to put that to bed by saying that it's already.
So you've been doing this anyhow, is what you're
Yes.
telling us, okay.
Without telling us.
Michael?
I think this is a good start. I don't want to, we have 2 members of the Water Commission out here, and we haven't taken the time to sit down with them. I, for one, have gotten more confused the more we talk about this and how it originally came about. Chris did a great job with Chris and Charlene with the presentation. We're still waiting for the answer from DOR. I know Chris has reached out to them a couple times, and Peter, you actually recommended in our last meeting that they, maybe we invite them down. So I think that important piece from the DOR is still important. In this memorandum of understanding, and I recognize it's a first start, the expenses that we talked about, the tax bill on the property is not in there, none of the expenses are in there. We also had been talking about 4357, not 4753, if memory serves me correct. 43% water department, 57% town.
I don't think so, but
Okay.
I'll double check. I don't.
Yeah, we should look at that. And lastly, I think it would be appropriate for us to meet with the water commissioners, recognizing they are part of the town, and discuss some options, discuss expenses, discuss where we're going. Noreen got up and had some conversation about selling them as an off-taker, selling their meter credits as an off-taker. So there is a mathematical formula to that as well. If we did sell them the off-taker, they're entitled to, we're the seller. We would get half of the metering credit back as a town. It was also mentioned in one meeting that the water department could take their meters and go shop them out in the market. Now and I'm gonna lose the lingo, but the rate that we got, the PPA price that we got, is exceptional, and that rate's not there anymore. So if they took their meters and shopped it, it wouldn't. The end game in this is an agreement got made. I appreciate that Chris kind of got thrown into it in the end, but he's in it now. An agreement got made. We used their meters to size our solar field. We never really communicated with the water department, and now the water department has been involved in at least 5 of these conversations, and we keep kicking around numbers. I'd like to, if it's appropriate, sit down with the water commissioners, with Chris, and go over all of this and include them in any deal that we make and any memorandum of understanding that we come up with, and see to it that the town gets what we originally expected out of this, which was roughly the 300,000. But at the same time, recognize that they are the town as well.
You mentioned, Michael, you just mentioned they could take their meters and shop them somewhere. Does that mean that if they have extra electricity, that they could sell something to an off-taker? How does, if that's true, if I heard that correctly, would that then invalidate our purchase power agreement with CVEC, et cetera, and get us all in a pickle?
Chris had spoken to Lizargo and mentioned in the last conversation we had about this that it would certainly change the deal of the power purchase agreement. Now, I've read the power purchase agreement 4 times. I think I finally get it. And based on what Lizargo has said, it wouldn't void it. We would have to come up with a new agreement, and there would be a side letter. So CVEC would be amenable to us changing the agreement, but we would have to work with CVEC.
We have to take that side letter back to town meeting?
I don't believe so, because I don't believe in the agreement. It's the town of Harwich's agreement. And I think one thing that I have without Tony from DOR's response, this is our agreement, the town of Harwich. We can do anything we want with it. We made the agreement. We could keep all the money. I believe that the Water Enterprise Fund would have the option at that point to go out and search for their own metering credits. But this seems to me to be fairly simple math. And the water commissioners, I think, have expressed that they want to do the right thing for the town. So why not include them in the process and sit down and make a deal that makes sense for both of us?
I think it starts with the, getting someone from DOR to pay attention to us.
Yep.
Actually get here. I'm not sure how to do that. I don't know what
He
the lever
actually
is.
called today. I was out of the office, so ironically, he called
Great.
today. I'll call him back tomorrow.
I think he needs to come down here and sit down, even if it isn't, in a session at one of our meetings like this, but just to say, hey, he's here on a Tuesday at 11 o'clock or something, here's the topic, let's have a meeting, sort of thing, Michael?
I think based on, I agree with you 100%, we need to get it from him, but I don't think he has anything to say other than we're working on it. So based on their website and all the information that's out there, Noreen's comments, John Giorgio's comments, I'm not sure that the DOR really has a position in this. I think the DOR's position is going to be the town of Harwich applied. It's on the town of Harwich land. We built the project. There's really, I don't see that there's really any gray area.
Well, but I think he needs to say that, he or she needs to
Yep.
say that, if
No,
that's the
I
case.
agree
And that's,
with you.
and that's fine, if they say that.
I think they have.
Well,
We asked,
haven't
we did
seen
ask
him.
that question. Chris asked that question, and he has not received the answer yet. So.
I haven't seen him. So,
Right
Okay.
there.
all right. Richard, you have something you wanted to add to this?
Yes, Richard Gunderson. I'm disappointed. I wanted to say all those things, and
Well,
Mike
then
didn't, really.
Unwind the tape and you can say it.
Yeah, no,
so.
it was, I got it all right here, and it's amazing.
Okay.
I just want to emphasize one area, and that is options. I think there are some options that should be explored, and not necessarily to default to a 43-57 split. And Noreen did have a good idea, and I think that should be one of the highlights and one of the more important options to address. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Michael?
If I may, do you want to wait till after the DOR decision? But I would like, to, to Chris's recommendation, to get the water commissioners to put it on their agenda and have a conversation. I may not be on the board, so you might have to have somebody else do it.
I mean, I don't think conversation is the issue. I mean, I don't have a problem with that. I think fundamentally getting DOR to say yay, nay, or we don't care is a fundamental step in moving forward, in my opinion, because then it gets that one off the table, if you will. So why don't we do this? Chris, if he called you today, my suggestion is, see if he'll come down and have a discussion with us about it.
I'll call
Again,
back
it could be any time, we could pick 2 people and go have a meeting with them or something, however you want to do it. But at least hear from him what his issues and concerns are. If he has an answer, fine. If he doesn't, let's understand where they are in the thought process. And if they end up saying, well, okay, just do what you want to do, then we'll go figure it out, because we could spend the next 2 weeks, working through our draft agreement and then find out that, well, okay, the guy from DOR really did figure it out and here's the answer. So I'd like to at least extend him that opportunity, because that seems to be a lot of what we're basing our, previous thoughts about this on. Linda?
Well, I mean, it also, if we've already been allocating these credits to the enterprise fund, whether that's what we want to do or not, we sort of by default have already made a decision. Because if we do it 1 year and then we get some more answers and then we decide to do something different, we've sort of already done something.
Well, the intent of this, the draft you have in front of you, if I remember right, was to put a 5-year agreement in place so that there's some certainty. And I would say that once we get some certainty, let's put a timeline in it that makes some sense for us. Okay.
I believe on that, Linda, I believe the conversation we had last discussion was we were holding back future credits until we made an expense agreement, weren't we?
That's what I recall. I didn't recall that we had some further discussion that we were going to hold doing anything further. So it sounds like that's not what's happened.
Until we figured out the expense side.
Until we figured out the expense side.
Have to dig out the minutes, I don't know. Someone dig out the minutes at some point, but anyhow. Richard, you're back again.
Yes, just one more quick thing. One of the conditions that was listed by this Tony Rashias in the Department of Revenue was whether or not there was a legislative action. If you did come up with a memorandum of understanding at some point between the town and the Water Enterprise Fund, it probably should go before the town meeting. Then it's a legislative action. It has a lot more teeth.
I understand. Okay, so we'll bring this one back. So Chris, why don't you let us know what you learned from this gentleman? And maybe you could start by, assuming you actually get in touch with him tomorrow, just send us collectively an email as to what you learned, and then if he's willing to come down as an agenda item, that's fine. If he just wants to come down and have a meeting, we can arrange that too. So, but I guess the point is, we'd like to see him or her or representative, whatever. Okay. In the meantime, I think it's perfectly fine to continue dialogue with the water department. There's no problem there at all. Right? You guys okay with that? All right, we'll move on. Revised committee handbook. Linda, I'm going to let you run through this because this has been your work of, or labor of love, I'll call it, in the last several months, if you will.
Let's not get carried away.
No, but I think just introduce it. People get appointed by us to boards, committees, commissions, et cetera.
They get appointed.
And we throw them in the water.
And we throw them in the water without a paddle. And I think we do the same thing as the Board of Selectmen. We throw them in without a paddle, yes, Janelle? And it's, you have to pick up information where you can. The committee handbook had been last done a few years ago. I know, Angelo, you put it together. And basically, what I did was take what Angelo had done, and it was pretty good, but I added to it because I found that we would pass a memo that says this is how you do remote participation, and then nobody can find the memo. And I've been at committee meetings where the remote participation, the votes are not being taken, not necessarily are all the votes taken by roll call. So there are a lot of places where people are, because they don't remember the memo, it is just not being done as closely as it could. So, how do you run an executive session? How do you run a public hearing? All of those things that will also assist a committee chair. I think people are afraid to be chairs of committees because they aren't really sure how to do all of these things. And you don't know who to run around and find that information out. So all of that has been put in here. I did go through our town clerk, did go through this. I've gone through a series of other people, including Voter Information Service. And so I've gotten all kinds of feedback. And this is it. I know the one thing that I desperately needed Sandy for is I only had a PDF of the application to go onto a committee, and I couldn't figure out how to take the PDF and stick it into a Word document. And so she did it, and she said, don't ever ask me to do that again.
There you go.
Because it was hard. And if it was hard for her, it was impossible for me. So this is it. It has a variety of new additions to it. Board of Selectmen policies, descriptions of town boards, committees, and commissions. There's really no place in town where that exists, so it exists in here now. There are some committees that still have not given us a one-paragraph description of what they do, and I'm sure they will, and we'll stick it in here. There's a governmental calendar. There are also the information on the open meeting law, the conflict of interest, special municipal employees, how to prepare town articles for town meeting. I think it's fairly complete. A lot of people suggested things to put in there, so it's fairly complete.
I think
hope.
also we should recognize the living document.
It is a living
So that,
document.
as things either change or get modified or, need to be adjusted, that could be done. But I know this was a yeoman kind of exercise, and that it's not something everybody wanted to sign up and go review and that type of thing, but you're right, a number of people looked at it.
You told me to.
I know, but a number of people looked at it, went through it, and this is where it is today. So I don't know if everybody's had a chance to take a look at it or go through it. I would encourage us, unless somebody has some major changes to bring forward, to adopt this and get it going so that, because we've kind of been languishing without an updated document for quite a while now. And, here we are when it becomes appointment season, which is coming up for a lot of new members, if you will. This is the time to get it in their hands so that when they come and take the oath from the town clerk, they're given either a hard copy of this or a stick or both or whatever, and they have their reading assignment, let's put it that way. Nothing beats the actual experience of going through it. And by people going through it and trying to deal with the document, we'll get some comments back, I'm sure, as to, what works and what doesn't work, or did you mean this, those types of things. But I think it's a great update, if you will, from where we had before, so.
Peter, unfortunately, the selectmen's policy about remote participation isn't quite right, given what we do today, and it needs to be changed. So I would suggest we change it. We go through the process to change it. It's just to allow the video portion with it, which is allowed by the state. So if we could do that, then at least when it gets printed in the book, it'll give the people who are reading the book and the committees that opportunity. I do think it's good to have all these documents within the book. And the other thing is, I think if you can give us the list of committees that have not turned in their little paragraph, and all of us are
Page
liaisons.
16.
Okay, I know.
Page 16.
Okay.
You could look at
I
it
don't
yourself.
have the whole thing here.
But it's in
Yeah.
our Dropbox, but page 16
Okay.
has the ones that are missing.
Okay, and then we can ask them to get them into you.
I would also
That's
suggest.
been ongoing, by the way.
I know,
It's
I know,
too-
I know.
It's taken.
I understand.
Some just don't respond. I would also suggest,
there.
Peter, that with Angelo's comment on some of our policies need to be updated, like for video, that one of the things that the selectmen do for the next year as a selectmen project is to go through some of our policies and procedures, because there are some that are completely outdated. And we still have a policy on the books that says, I believe it's the police department is supposed to pay back their training expense for when they get sent to the police academy, and they're supposed to pay that money back. I'd be hard-pressed to know the last person who did that. So I think we have policies that are old, probably outdated, probably need to be significantly rewritten. So I think that would be a good project for next year.
All right, what's your draw this? Anybody have a motion they want to make? Michael?
Do we want to wait until do we want to try and get, how are we going to print these? Are they going to be done in the spiral? Are they going to be done so these paragraphs can be added? Are we?
Well, part of what this is, for example, Angela says we're going to change, we should change the policy on remote participation. You can take the 2 pages out and stick the new 2 pages in. So I think you have to start somewhere, and as something changes or is added, you send out new pages,
Or revision sheets?
revision sheets.
Yeah.
And just say, take out pages 27 and 28 and stick these 2 in.
Or if you have it electronically, here's the whole thing done.
Here's the whole thing done again, so.
Which, by the way, would, I think, push people more to the electronic version, I would hope.
Yeah, I would really suggest that we do it on sticks. If there are people who need to have it printed, give them a printed copy, but I think a lot of people would like to have it on a stick so they can just stick it into their computer.
Angela?
I was just thinking, maybe we should also have it up on the town website.
Town website,
Absolutely.
it is,
Rather
yep.
than sticks, so
Absolutely.
as we change it,
Yeah.
We could get it updated and just
Yeah.
tell people it's updated.
Yep.
Mr. Chair, I move that we accept and adopt the revised committee handbook as written.
Thank you, Janelle.
Welcome.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded to adopt the revised committee handbook. Michael?
Can we just add that open meeting? I mean, it seems before we print it, we just change the,
Got to have a hearing, you've got to have it published. There's a process to change a policy.
no, okay, but the policy is the state policy on open meeting law for remote participation. Do we add the actual remote participation, or are we gonna go with Board of Selectmen policy that's not quite the same as the state's?
I don't even know if the state has a policy on remote participation. They said we can do it.
Yeah, no, they have a pretty detailed policy.
Yeah, they
on
do.
remote. And the only addition we have to add is when video technology is in use, the remote participant shall be clearly visible to all persons present in the meeting location.
Yep, and
That's
that's
really
what
all
we
we
have
have
to
to
change.
add. So if we could add that, can we add that before we go to print? Or do we have to, or Peter, do we have to change the selectmen's policy?
Well, let's,
Change the selectmen's
here-
policy.
let's do this. Here's my suggestion. Let's vote this subject to next week, updating the selectmen's policy on remote participation. We'll get that voted next week, and then we can go print this
Do we have to have 3 hearings and
No,
on the policy.
on policy, creation of policy?
We've waived those before.
we can
Yeah,
waive them
okay,
because of the timing.
that's true, that's true.
Okay.
Okay, so is that your motion?
That's my motion.
Second.
Who did second it, by the way?
I did
Was that you?
second.
Okay, so it's moved and seconded to adopt or approve this revised committee handbook, subject to the Board of Selectmen updating next week its policy on remote participation to include the video aspect. Further discussion? Hearing none, we'll put it to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's a vote. Thank you.
Just a
Thank you.
comment.
Yep.
Thank you, Linda.
Yeah,
A lot of work. Thank you very much.
yep.
You can
Ditto.
have that if you want
Thank
it for the
Yeah,
next week's
okay,
policy.
all right. So Chris, just take a note that we need to revise that, bring that
Yep.
policy next week, okay?
Got it,
Thank
got
you. Okay, town administrator's report. Chris, you got with David Spitz announcing to us that he's retiring.
Yes.
I know that brings about some thoughts as to, what do we really do with the town planner position, and some members of the Board of Selectmen have been asking me what are we gonna do about that, et cetera, et cetera. So we wanted to get your thoughts on that and start a discussion about it. Not that we're gonna, move forward with something tonight, but just start to talk about the options.
Yeah, I think that's key, is just I wanted to get at least something on the table and have a discussion, and then we can kind of formalize it with the board. I'll do a formal reorganization plan if that's what is decided. I guess first and foremost, just to kind of walk through this a little bit, the memo, because folks at home may want to have an interest in it. Anytime we have somebody depart, I think it makes sense to take a look at the position, how does it operate, how has it operated, and are there opportunities for efficiencies. I think that Dave Spitz did a great job, and I think also Dave Spitz did revise the way that job was being done, where he did more than just planning, he did also a lot of special projects. And that really kind of led me to thinking about how do we want to move forward. I also wanted to get the input of Mr. Spitz and Mr. Atkinson, the chairman of the planning board. So they did submit, actually they submitted 3 options for consideration. The first was to retain an independent planning department as it exists today. Second, to integrate the department more fully into a community development department. And then third, to consider a regional planning department with the town of Chatham. Basically, what I came up with in my recommendation to the board is that I think that we need to understand first that the town planner has certain areas of responsibility. So they work directly with as a support to the planning board. They also do planning support for zoning changes. I know East Harwich and Route 28 corridor. Dave has invested quite a bit of time in that. Regulatory reviews and comprehensive plan support and special projects. Those areas that, and the special projects have been centered around building revitalization for town assets. So kind of reflecting upon the information and upon discussion, I think there's really, in my mind, two roads to go down, and I'm sure there'll be some potential variations of this. But the first, I know when I started that there was a real interest that there were 22 direct reports for the administrator, and how do you divvy up those 22 direct reports? What's a better way to do it? We did do a centralization of the community development departments, in which we brought building, conservation, engineering, health, and planning together kind of more physically by having them all in the same area, which happened before. And administratively, we had some discussion. I think the staff upstairs, some of the department heads asked me about during some of the reorganization, could they maintain some of their independence and kind of work in a collaborative model? I don't know if that has worked out altogether that well, to be perfectly honest. So one of the intents that I had starting off was to have the assistant town administrator, and now that we have an assistant town administrator that has a planning background, how do we capture and make use of some of those skills? So one of the main concept that I have here is that the assistant town administrator, whose position was recently upgraded, I would not anticipate that there would be any additional salary adjustments, but that we would have her, in this case her, become the department head over the community development, for her to do coordination and to work with the folks upstairs. And then we would hire an assistant town planner, so somebody not with necessarily the same skill set. Apparently in the manager's agreement, there is a assistant town planner position that's in there, so it already exists in the union contract. We'd have to go through, obviously, and update the job description in terms of that. But how do we take and just add more work to the assistant town administrator? You have to take something kind of off of that person's plate. And in discussions with staff, there were people that were down there. We had initially 3 staffers in the administrator's office. And I'm very cognizant of making sure we try not to increase costs too much. So the idea would be to hire an assistant town planner, which would theoretically be less money than the town planner, and to take some of that money to have a part-time clerical person, that we would make sure we keep it below the benefited level. So as the assistant town administrator is responsible for HR, doing salary surveys and things of that nature, we could pass some of that work off to a more of a clerical person to accomplish, and allow for the assistant town administrator to help to coordinate the activities of upstairs. So that would be kind of the option. I think having the planner too, the assistant planner, would have the, we want to try to recruit somebody that had other talents beyond just planning, whether that's in computers to help with some of the Acela issues that we've had. I think it has some, it makes some sense. Also, just to the point that was raised with the folks on the board, that I think if we had somebody that was familiar with doing a comprehensive plan update, to have them also be able to have some experience in doing that. The second option would be just to kind of maintain the status quo. I do think the amount of planning that occurs in the community, there's just not, we're a developed community, there's just not a tremendous amount of activity. So I think that we should look at the job description and see, maybe add in grant writing, which David has done some of, project management and special projects. So I think if we were to maintain the status quo, I think we would want to take this opportunity to update the job description to make it more reflective of some of the activities that Dave is taking into account. Also, 2 other points. One, I think with the town of Chatham, I think that's an interesting idea. I think it takes more time than we currently have available to us to develop that idea. So I just, timing-wise, I just don't see that as a viable option. I think as we move forward, if we're able to do the IMA and continue to build some positive momentum, there may be opportunities down the road. But I think at this stage, he's leaving at the beginning of July. The second part of this memo is just, he is leaving in July, and we need to have somebody to fill in. So I would anticipate using the Assistant Town Administrator as a interim town planner until we get the reorganization kind of finalized. So from an operations standpoint, you know, I think that would be an approach. I know the charter has in it that in the absence of a department head, somebody in administration usually fills in. We have done that in the time I've been here. I filled in personally as the water superintendent, and then I know Julie filled in as the golf director. So we do have some practice. I would really encourage that be a short term. I think Water Commission, I was down there for a year, and that is a drain on administration. I think kind of due to the hour, at least I wanted to get those concepts on the table and see what direction the board wants to go in, maybe by having that as new business for an upcoming meeting so we can have some discussion of direction or.
Chris, do we know any time-sensitive items that the existing planner is dealing with that won't get done between now and the time that he retires?
With Charlene's been out because of surgery,
Yeah, no, I
so
understand.
I'll have her meet with David to make sure that we have the beginnings of transition.
Okay, I think it would also be helpful to have Charlene here to have a discussion since, you know, we're looking,
Yes.
at least one of your options here is to, you know, change her day-to-day activities, if you will. So I think, you know, we would welcome that discussion, I think, at this point in time. I also think that unless it's some, you know, massive project that's time-sensitive, that we have some time to work through this. It would also be good to hear from the planning board, I guess, or at least the chairman of the planning board, as to what their needs are in the next, I don't know, 3
Yeah,
to
I did
6
attach
months.
the materials that they submitted, so
Uh-huh.
I included that.
Mhm.
That's what I was presented with from the
Yeah.
planning board.
Yeah,
those three
I,
options.
you know, I don't view this as something we have to rush into. I mean, I don't think so. We can take some time to think about what we want to do here and what makes most sense for the, you know, for the town, quite frankly, so. Linda?
The stuff that the planning board and the town planner indicates some community preservation, that assumes CPC funds from the Community Preservation Committee. Could you talk a little about that? Could we have the chair of the CPC committee about how available those funds are?
Well, this was,
I hear the first comment first.
You're waking him up out there, Linda, so, all
Wake up out there.
right, you know that guy?
I do know that guy, so I'm telling him to wake up.
Would you repeat your question now?
Question is that two of the options that were put forth by Jim Atkinson and David Spitz include, under the caption, serves as staff too, and it says, Community Preservation Committee assumes 25,000 CPC funds. How available is that money? Is that doable? And I don't know the answer to that.
Good evening, Bob, how are you?
Good evening, Bob McCready, Community Preservation Committee Chair. Well, for one, the presumption is that that is being identified, I guess, within the context of what are considered to be the administrative funds under CPC. That would be the only place that it would be possible. And the committee does prepare articles on a regular, almost annual basis to ask for a certain amount of administrative funds, but those are the only funds that are available through CPC for administration of whatever administrative acts that come before us. The CPC committee would have to make a specific decision on itself that it is trying to acquire additional administrative services for CPC first, and how much funding of its administrative funds it was interested in spending for those services. That would be the first step. Secondarily, the Act, and I've very recently confirmed through the Alliance, the Act is very narrowly focuses how, in fact, administrative services can be acquired, and it is particularly narrow to try and be able to use in any form existing town employees for CPC administrative services. there's considerable focus in the act to make sure that there is essentially no replacement of existing hours with CPC funding that was to be paid for with town funding. So it's a very focused, narrow window in which you can carve something out, and it all again starts with the CPC first deciding that it is in fact interested in purchasing services. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, anything else?
Just a comment, one of the organizations that you're proposing is something we had probably 10 years ago.
What's that?
With the assistant town manager being involved with the 4 or 5 departments up there, but he wasn't focused totally on planning. But it's similar to what we had in place a number of years.
Well, that depends on the skill set and experience,
Sure.
of the folks available. Michael?
Chris, can I ask that you put some kind of numbers in a flow chart, increased responsibilities for different people, what these options will cost roughly?
You mean like in terms of salary adjustments?
Right. Who will do what? Who's going to be impacted? Who will be where? I know we had a reorganization of the upstairs a couple of years ago that didn't go over so great. So has that been talked about? If we're going to reorganize upstairs, are they going to be included in the reorg? Things like that.
This is really the first step. So, I mean, one of the things I'm trying to get a reaction from, obviously you guys, and then this is a public document, so I'm sure I'll get some reaction from, part of the organization. But I'm happy to pursue if people are interested in certain concepts.
Well, I think that regardless of whether the planner was leaving or not, at some point in time, at least my expectation was that we would get back to a model where the assistant town administrator would have X amount of individuals because of the span
That
of
was
control
always
and
the
whatnot.
intent when I
Yeah.
was hired.
That we had done before. The question is, how do you break that up? How do you split it up? And I do think a lot of it depends on the skill set and education level, et cetera, experience of the person that is in the assistant town administrator role. And that's why I'd like, quite frankly, to hear from Charlene as to what she thinks of all this before we get too far down the road.
Yep. And we could do some preliminary kind of what is
Yeah,
an
yeah.
assistant planner, what's the salary range? We could certainly look at that.
And are those kind of people available if you're only talking, I'm making this up, 15 hours a week or something, are those kind of people available? Or, is there the subcontracting role or something where you get basically a consultant to fill in? I don't know, just a concept.
Yeah, I think if we were gonna go for an extended period, I thought my first year having those 2 vacancies really distracted from trying to do core stuff.
Yep, no
So
doubt.
having a consultant may be something I would
Okay,
give some consideration to.
so let's bring this back in a week or two.
The next one, and actually, Michael was at this meeting with me, so on the Pleasant Bay Alliance watershed, they had a meeting, I think it was last Wednesday night, in which there was some discussion about that were they gonna be the ones that put together kind of the compliance reports for what DEP is looking for. And they sent some material into the Cape Cod Commission. The Cape Cod Commission kind of responded back somewhat harshly, saying, no, we're expecting the towns to respond to this, not directly the Alliance. And I think at the meeting, there was trying to get a sense that the Alliance is made up of the 4 towns that make up Pleasant Bay, and they're as a support and a resource to the Selectmen. In this case, the Water Management Authority, or Wastewater Management Authority, is the Board of Selectmen, by what the Cape Cod Commission had submitted relative to the 208. So there was a discussion about what role should the Alliance play, and as an end result of that meeting, I think Carol Ridley was kind of tasked with putting together a letter and sending it out for how they would respond to the Cape Cod Commission. I think I've mentioned this to the board during the last 6 months, that we have put together kind of an action plan that we do have to have our submission in by June in order to comply with that 208, the September deadline. And the Wastewater Implementation Committee has tasked David Young to put together those materials, the watershed reports. So those are in the process of being done and would be submitted to DEP to make us stay in good standing with the 208 elements. But I just wanted to provide just some of the material of, I think we provided what was sent and what the response was. So the board had a flavor for what was transpiring. As soon as I get that material from Carol, I will forward that to the board for consideration.
Okay, and you expecting that she or that group would come to see us at some point in time?
And she did ask to also come in and schedule a time to come in and just kind of update the board on their activities.
Okay, this is meant to supplement or enhance what the town is doing in Pleasant Bay watershed, I guess, or?
I
Is
guess
it conflicting? Is
the
it?
easy answer I would say is yes. The hope is that they would be providing support to what the town is doing.
Okay, I guess we'll look forward to the definition of what that means, since I don't quite know at the moment, but.
I think that was a very accurate reflection, and Chris did a great job speaking, but he also made it clear that Harwich would be in charge of their own destiny, and Chatham was very vocal about the Alliance can help, but they're not going to submit our reports.
I was just very surprised at the depth that the Alliance is into the sewering project. You know,
To which sewing project?
I mean, the project in
The
East
overall
Harwich.
project.
The overall project. The responses and to the county on the project that we sent in. I'm surprised they're working in that area.
I mean, you know, a group can decide it wants to respond to whatever public information is out there. I know Carol presented at or had comments anyhow when the Cape Cod
Yeah.
Commission had the hearing here on the Harwich plan. But I don't see, excuse me, I don't see any official capacity they have at the moment dealing with a Harwich Comprehensive Wastewater Management Plan. I mean, that's our plan.
And I think that that's important,
That's
that we
the
make
problem.
that clear, which
Oh,
we were trying
yeah,
to
okay.
do.
All right, well, more to come. I mean, if, you know,
More to come.
Yeah.
She wants to come before us.
that's fine.
And I just had a couple others. I did go down on Friday and take a look at the Muddy Creek project, so they are making good progress, and hopefully that will be done. I think they were supposed to have it done by the 20th, end of this week. So weather permitting, hopefully they'll be able to do the paving.
So they think that's a reality, that they'll actually open that bridge on this Friday? So,
Cautiously optimistic is probably, the guy in the field that was doing it. I think at least this week's weather is better than last.
Yeah, last week's.
So I think that will be kind of critical. Also, too, on the shellfish lab, they did put in additional pilings, and they were able to reinforce it. I went down there as well on Friday, had to take a look. They did rebuild the floor, so the last thing that remains to be done is the roof. So that was all done as part of a grant that we had available money to accomplish that. And then the last, I don't always come to town on off nights, and I did come in on Saturday night, and my two girls talked me into inviting them as well for the trolley tour. And
That was fun.
boy, you know, it was a great time. I thought a lot of the restaurants in the community really did themselves proud. You know, very welcoming. The food was excellent. Some of them, I think, you know, really wanted to load you up on food, so it's encouraged to pace yourself. But I just thought it was a real nice event, and I think that was the first time that's been tried, doing the trolley. I know Linda and Bob were there, so they can certainly speak to their experience. But I thought, you know, I would definitely do that again. We had a nice time.
and the weather cooperated.
And the weather cooperated. It got a little cold at the end of the evening, but it was fun.
It was a nice time. That actually concludes my comments this evening. Mr.
Okay. Selectmen's report, Janelle?
Yep, I got something. It's hard to believe it's been a year. Tomorrow's Election Day. And I just wanted to say thank you to this board because we're not sure what's going to happen. And it's been a pleasure. And I hope and wish for you both the best for tomorrow. Thank you for all the guidance. And I'm looking forward to my next role next year. And hopefully you'll be here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Michael?
I got a call from Scott Carpenter from Monomoy Regional High School. They're doing a turf field concession stand fundraiser. So Saturday, the 21st, starts at 12. There is a fundraiser project that's going to kick off at the track. They're doing a barbecue. There's 2 games. I believe both of them are lacrosse games. But Scott was hoping to get the word out.
Okay.
So Saturday, the 21st at 12 p.m.
May?
May, yes. This coming Saturday.
This Saturday.
So it's community barbecue and a bid auction they got auction items, and so it's fun.
Is there an admission price or anything, or?
You know, they didn't put a whole lot of detail in here,
Okay.
so I would imagine the food.
Is $10 additional? Oh, 10,000, okay.
Oh, yeah, and basically, what's left to raise is there's a bunch, there's 65,000 left to raise. They've already raised, well, it looks like about 160,000.
Okay.
Which included the slab and the electric that's already put in, and so it looks like the balance to raise is about 65,000. He did mention there's a fair amount of businesses from Chatham that have donated. He was hoping to get the word out in Harwich.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
That's it.
Okay, Angelo?
Nope.
Linda?
Oh, just that we'll be at a graduation, so we won't be there. So I
Okay.
was checking the date, the month, but nothing else.
I'll have your barbecue as well.
There you go. All right. Thank you very much for attending. We are done.
Thank you.
Thank you. And please vote tomorrow.